Their shapes have been restyled, their controls redesigned, but there's one thing about Mustang that will never change. The sheer thrill of driving one. The new Mustang convertible, LX, and GT. What they have in common is anything but. This is Mustang.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, guys. Doing the old school retro mods, like I've been doing on Pop's car and like we've done on some of the other cars out here. Kind of got me to thinking, this video I haven't done in a long time, but I wanted to take us all the way back to the early 90s. So let's go. Guys, I'm going to be real with you, and all of my OG guys know what I'm talking about. And when I say OG guys, the guys that were there, the guys that lived through this, the reason we're so into these cars now is because we grew up in that time. And I got my very first Fox body in 1994. I turned 16 in 1993. But my very first Fox body was not a Mustang. It was a 1987 Thunderbird. I couldn't afford one back then. I worked for Jiffy Lube at the time, believe it or not. Worked there for quite a while, ended up being store manager, and didn't make a whole lot. You know, worked 6 days a week, so I didn't have a lot of time. But my first actual Fox body was a 87 V8 Sport Thunderbird, and it was a 5.0 non-HO AOD car, 7.5-inch rear end. And man, I gotta tell you, that was one of my favorite cars, and that's one of the ones I wish I still had. So just long story short, that car allowed me to kind of get my feet wet in the Fox body game. I ended up converting that car to 5-speed using all Mustang parts. Converted it to HO with an engine out of an 88, and also that same wrecked 88 I got the engine from, I also got the 8.8 from. And you know, it wasn't a Mustang. I wanted a Mustang bad, but for that period of time, it allowed me to do something cool, to have something, you know, fast. And it was actually unique. A lot of the Fox body guys that I would go out and cruise with on Friday and Saturday nights really dug the car because it was something a little bit different. But anyway, we're back in the early to mid 90s, and I'm going to tell you the top 5 things, first things you're going to do to your Fox body back in the day. All right, so the very first thing that I would do, and mostly because it's free and it was pretty effective, was what the magazines back in the day called the 10-minute tune-up. Now, what the 10-minute tune-up included was, number one, yanking the air silencer that bolted in behind your air box, and you could usually see it kind of poking through right there. Yank that out. Bump your timing up to 13-14 degrees depending on the octane you had available in your area. And I'd always go 14 because we always had, you know, 93 octane readily available. And I said free. Drop a K&N filter in there. Back then I think they were like 19 bucks for a panel filter, if that. So that was affordable. But timing bump, yank the silencer, drop in a K&N filter, and you had, I don't know, 10 horsepower, maybe a little more, depending on the car. But it was something cheap. It was something pretty easy to do if you didn't have a timing light, you know, borrow a buddy's or something like that. And that was your very first mod you'd always do when you got a Fox body. So number 4, if they didn't have it already, and mine didn't, you got to hear that thing, man. So the very next thing I would do is go to an exhaust shop or wherever, have them yank the stock mufflers off and weld in a set of Flowmasters. Now these are a set of Max that were originally on Pop's car, but that was the very next thing you could do. You couldn't most of the time afford a catback, all of that, But you could afford a set of Flowmasters. And I remember back in the day at an exhaust shop, you could get a pair of Flowmasters welded in for like 110 bucks. I mean, bring back those days, for God's sake. But at that point, your car actually sounded like it had some beans, and that definitely made for a better day. All right, the third thing I would do was probably one of the most affordable mods back in the day that, truth be told, didn't really do the car any favors. But it was a set of underdrive pulleys. And if you don't know what those are, that's your crank, your water pump, and your alternator. And essentially they were supposed to generate extra horsepower by reducing parasitic loss from your front accessory drive. They did make some power. I've seen dyno test anywhere from 5 to 15. So there was a little bit of power there. The issue you would run into was undercharging of the alternator. You know, even in stock form, the factory alternators suck. And if you added a system, which most guys did, you were having problems. Every time the base hit or whatever, your lights would dim, and that was without pulleys. But were they great? No, but they were 49, 59 bucks. I mean, they were cheap. They were easy to install, and they did make a little bit of power. But that was number 3, set of underdrive pulleys. All right, so the very next thing, we'll call it number 2 in no particular order. Delete all the smog. Now, there's your smog pump right there, and like most of them, they would freeze up. I've never really seen a dyno test that said how much the smog pump robbed horsepower wise. Maybe none, I don't know. I'd be interested to see those numbers. But what it did do was drop a little bit of weight, if 5 pounds, if that. But it did clean up your front accessory drive, and also that allowed you to get rid of all of these hoses. And while I was doing that, you know, getting rid of all these hoses, which made it easier to swap headers later, the crossover tube on the back side of the heads, I would pull that off, cut the lines right there at the top, and then flip them over, bolt them back down. So that would plug your heads. That would get rid of all that, and then all these goofy solenoids and all that would clean up this area. So essentially, you'd get rid of that, your smog pump, get rid of all these hoses and everything, all those lines, all these solenoids. So what you ended up with was a lot cleaner look. Did it make any more power? I don't know, probably not. But it definitely cleaned up the engine bay a lot. So that, number 2. And the number 1 best OG mod from back in the day. Now you had to save up a little bit longer, but it was an off-road H-pipe. Now back then, you could get a BBK off-road H-pipe for 159 bucks. There were some cheaper ones. Hedman made one. Pacesetter made one that you could get for like 99 bucks. I'm telling you, the prices today are insane. If you go back and look at the old magazines and look at the price differences, they're nuts. But that was the next coveted mod, and the reason is everybody believed the catalytic converters to be very restrictive, and truth be told, they were fairly restrictive, especially back in the day. I think they've gotten a lot better over time. Pop in an off-road H-pipe, and not only did the car sound better, but you believed there to be a lot more horsepower, and that was a really good feeling. Now I know we're only talking about a top 5, and those were, to the best of my recollection, the first things I would do. And again, most of it was due to cost-wise. Yes, I wanted heads. Yes, I wanted a supercharger and a cam and a GT40 intake, all that stuff. But, you know, the money just wasn't there, you know, for a guy, you know, that's 18 years old. So you had to do with what you had, and that's what we did. Now, there are a couple honorable mentions I want to talk about. All right, so back in the day, damn near every Fox body with wheels had weld wheels. Just, they're the classic. They were dirt cheap. I think the front runners were like $159, and then the rears, which would be a 15 by 8, were like $169. But guys, you could have a set of weld wheels for like $550. Not including tires, obviously. They were light. They looked great. Gave you that race car look. And, you know, you were like, yeah, I'm fast now. I got my lightweight wheels, which they do. I mean, especially having the 3.5s on the front. But I mean, they looked great. They were a classic freaking look. So a couple of the other affordable, easy to install somewhat parts would be your short throw shifter. Pro 5.0 was the bomb back in the day. Everybody had a Pro 5.0. Again, pretty easy to install. Looked cool, you know, nice shorty handle instead of the giant donkey. Anyway, headers, shorty headers, the BBK chrome unequal length shorty headers. Again, $159, dirt cheap. You know, you could install them in like an hour and a half. And sure, they made a little power and again added to the sound of the car, but could not finish this list out with shorty shifter and a set of chrome BBKs. All right, guys, there you go. Had to go back in time just a little bit and talk about how we got here. Like, you know, especially for me, why I started Foxcast Media was just a true passion for these cars and growing up with them, you know, playing with them for years and owning many of them over the years. And so I know my OG guys will appreciate it. And you guys that are new to the Fox Body game, it's where it came from, man. They ruled the cruising scene. Those and mini trucks totally ruled the cruise scene. And a lot of good memories, a lot of good times. And man, sometimes I wish I could go back. But what I will say, guys, is even though those were great times, it is also now a great time to be a Fox Body guy. I mean, we've got so many freaking amazing parts available at our disposal. And I mean, it's a great time to be an enthusiast, whether it's resto, performance. It's really a great time to be a Fox Body, guys. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did, even if you didn't, because a lot of memories there. All right, guys, so please drop me a big thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.